All right. Good afternoon. How's it going, man? Great.
Hey, Steven. I'm good. How about yourself? How was your long weekend?
That was great. It was much needed, to say the least.
I agree.
Yep.
With kind of the deals we are putting under contract back to back.
Yeah, in fact,
Slam dunks all the way. So I think
yeah,
you need more long weekends in a month.
seriously. Just crazy busy. It looks like Nick and I have our first deal together.
Nice. Congratulations,
Yeah.
guys.
Super exciting. Nick just sent me the message.
PSA.
Yeah, let's have a call after this, Nick, to review that PSA and tee that one up for our next syndication.
Perfect. We'll probably finish about 15 minutes before the hour because I only have one presentation. And then maybe I'll meet with you at 4 as we had planned. But in case that Steve and I run long or this call runs long, just plan 4:15 at the latest.
Okay.
That works.
Nope. Nick.
That works. Hey, Trav. How's it going?
It's going good. How are y'all doing?
Fantastic. Going well. Just got our first retail to self-storage opportunity in Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Where in Cincinnati?
Nick, do you have the address?
Yep. Let me pull it up.
And the seller is doing a 45% carryback.
Oh man, all right.
Right. So
Yeah,
they're on the
that's
market
wonderful.
for 1.8. I think we got it tied up for 1.2, Nick?
Yep. With 50% at 4.5% interest, amortized over 30 years, to be paid off in 40 months. But our refi date's set for 33. So, and then we got 120-day due diligence. So really, really great terms on the carryback financing. It's 3915 Reading Road, Cincinnati.
Reading Road. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Do you know Cincinnati well, Travis? Oh, I think we lost you. All right. Well, we'll touch upon that a little bit later.
Sorry, no, I got you. Yeah, I know Reading Road. I'm from Cincinnati originally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, you could be our boots on the ground.
I could be, yes, sir. I would be, yes, sir.
That's a better answer.
Yeah.
Better answer. I like it. If no one knows, Travis and I just put our first hospitality to multifamily conversion under contract, and we just solidified the GP team, brought in some strong players to kind of round out that capital stack, and we're off to the races, huh, Travis?
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, likewise. It's going to be a great project.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a few minutes after the hour. We'll go ahead and get started. Christina, if you could pull up our hospitality assets that we'll be reviewing for today. And we are going to be expanding asset classes. We're going to be touching our toes in, well, not touching our toes, literally just jumping right into the pool, huh, Dan?
Yeah.
We're looking we're looking at basically office complexes, converting those office complexes into a multi-family mixed-use community. We'll call it that because we're dealing with a lot of square footage. But not to get ahead of myself, let's jump right into our first opportunity. We submitted an LOI on this property. This is the Quality Inn and Suites. It's a resort in Naples. Little backstory on this particular property. It sounds like the owner went ahead and converted the hospitality asset to a multifamily use without getting the necessary approvals, without paying the impact fees. And now the city is coming down on them really heavily and fining them for doing such. So one thing you want to pay attention to is that nothing is done until you get the change of use approved. You don't want to close on any of these assets if you're thinking about doing the conversion play until you get that fully approved. So in this case, the owner of this hospitality asset kind of jumped the gun, went ahead and began setting these up as apartments, building them out, adding kitchenettes, and has actually leased up these apartments. And now he has to go through the trouble of getting them all vacant or vacated, and then kind of unwind the opportunity where the city will be compensated for the fact that they did not go through the change of use. So this came across my desk from a broker relationship. We went ahead and did the underwriting. I feel like, you know, their ask price is a little on the high side. They're indicating that they received offers in and around that strike price. I find that a little hard to believe, but let's go ahead and jump into this one. So next slide. Here's a property summary. Kind of gave you a high level overview. Quality Inn, opened in 1988. It is franchised. It looks like it was originally built in 1977, renovated in 2012, 153 keys, 3 stories, interior corridor. We got some meeting space, about 1,800 square feet, sitting on 4.39 acres. And we have around 200 parking spaces, or 1.31 spaces per room, which seems a little light on the parking. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes, sir.
Question.
Go ahead.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, but how about yourself?
Great. I'm also doing well. Thanks for asking. I wanted to know, with meeting room space, what do you typically designate for that when you convert to multifamily? Does it still have value as its own space, or do you convert that into living as well, or other?
Excellent question. It comes down to the size of that meeting space. So if it's a full service hotel and you have a convention room with
Right.
thousands of square feet, you could in theory chop that up and add some additional apartments. But in most cases, we like to use that space for 1 or 2 uses, either a self-storage facility, so storage lockers, right? So you're thinking about converting these hotel rooms into studio apartments. It doesn't leave a lot for storage. So in order to increase your NOI, you could conceptually put in storage lockers and rent those back to the tenants. And you can also look at converting that meeting space into a coin operated laundry facility.
Sure.
Right. So those are 2 concepts that we have deployed on our recent conversions, and we can maximize that space and use that for those 2 particular uses.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, because the size of these rooms preclude any ability to put in-unit washer dryer, right? Typically.
Correct. Correct. And then you're also dealing with plumbing issues, right? Because if you're increasing the load on the plumbing, you're going to run into some other problems down the road. So it's, and a lot of these hotels have, you know, laundry facilities on site. So you can convert that laundry facility, pull out those commercial washers and dryers, right? Because you're not going to really need those, sell those off third party to another potential buyer, offset some capital there, make some money on those potential transactions, and then use that space as a laundry facility.
I see. Okay, great. Thanks for the comprehensive answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And just, you know, feel free to jump in if you guys have any questions at any time. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on talking. So here we are, some pictures of the asset in question. Looks like it's got a tile roof, you know, well built, sitting on, it looks like adjacent maybe a park, baseball diamond. I see some lights there, open green field, some residential in the area. So great location, would work very well for multifamily. Just again, unfortunately, they did not take the steps necessary to convert this appropriately to multifamily. Apparently the owner did not know that I had this call on Thursdays, and otherwise he probably would have joined and learned these situations before making that mistake. Go ahead, next slide. And we're going to go ahead and touch upon the location. So it sits there down. Okay, so it's a golf course that's actually sitting on. Okay, so that open green field was not a park, but actually sitting on a golf resort or golf course. Great location. Again, it's in Naples, Florida. We love Florida. Next slide. Here are the analytics. So as you can see here, the absorption rate, not really strong. Those numbers would raise concern in my book. I definitely want to call and contact those comps and see what the situation is locally. The exit price per unit or per door, 283,000. That's a strong exit. Rents are strong. Population growth is also, strong as well. So I would definitely want to, after an LOI were to be accepted, I'd want to confirm why that absorption is showing a negative number, even though population is expected to grow 7.6%. So that's something I want to shore up before going into contract. Most importantly, since these are studio apartments mostly, you notice the population growth, 20 to 29-year-olds, very strong, so close to 10%. That's typically what you're going to see as far as leasing up these units. Next slide. Here are some rent comps. So looks like square footage wise, again, I always like to look at the price per square foot. So it's renting close to around $3 a square foot. Mind you, these are going to be studio apartments, so the smaller in size will in most cases generate a higher cost per square foot. So I would see this easily exceeding $3 a square foot. Next slide. And here is some of our underwriting. So this was on a $9 million purchase price. Again, they were asking 14. So based upon a $9 million purchase price, if we were to put in sprinklers, the rate being 334 square feet, getting somewhere around $900. And those are the returns respectively. So typically green means go, and that's the number we feel that we would, call it a decent strike price at $9 million. I'm confident that we could make this happen. Anything above 9 million, the certainty of closing diminishes, right? So we're looking at somewhere around $58,000 per key. Again, the exit is, somewhere north of 200,000. So I think all in, we were somewhere north of about 120,000 per door. And so that's the LOI and the dollar amount we had submitted. Sounds like we are a little on the low side as far as our offer goes, but I'd rather be conservative than try to overpay for an asset. Next slide.
Stephen, quick question on the underwriting. I saw the 5,000 per room. What was the CapEx going towards if the units are converted with the kitchenettes?
Just some uncertainties, it could be some paint, could be an updating on the electrical package. I mean, there's always going to be CapEx per door regardless. Who knows how they handled the electrical and or plumbing. So you always want to put some type of placeholder there, even if it's if it was new construction, you probably still want to have some type of placeholder there, because there could be contractual, or the contractor could have made some mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's better to be a little conservative. And in this case, I put in about $5,000 CapEx, even though these have been recently converted into studio apartments.
Right on. And you might have mentioned this, I was getting my deck ready, but what was the price that the seller's seeking?
They were seeking 14.
Oh, okay.
So, and then, with that number, we also wanted to bake in around 5,000 per door for impact fees, because I know that the seller probably did not pay those impact fees. So now we're at 10,000 a door, right? So, and then, there is a possible need for some sprinklers. I would imagine they did not add sprinklers to these units. So I also underwrote the opportunity to add those sprinklers into the rooms.
Stephen, I got a question like on the similar lines as Nick had a question around the CapEx. So I know you budgeted 5K per unit just in case, if something is kind of incorrectly done by the previous contractors who work on these units, but what about the other heavy items like HVAC or roofs and whatnot? How do you usually take those into account when underwriting the deal, or it mostly depend on the asset and you guys go through the pictures and whatnot, and from there make an assumption that this is something you guys might not have to build into the budget?
Yeah, no, excellent question. We're obviously going through, looking at this, with the pictures that are available to us. The roof looks like it's in pretty decent shape, but that 5,000 capex per door could also be absorbed with MEP and HVAC, right? So hence the reason why I always like to put some type of placeholder in there, because more than likely there's going to be something that needs to be addressed. And then once it goes and we get some type of, accepted LOI and that's been countersigned, then we'll fly out there, walk the asset with the general contractor, and then take a closer look at the roof, take a closer look at the mechanicals, electrical and plumbing, and then if necessary, we'll retrade.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
I think the goal is just to kind of figure out what was a reasonable strike price, right? And then submitting an LOI that you feel like if we can get around this number, we can transact. But then again, this is barring any type of like surprises. So, say for example, the environmental comes back and there's been like a petroleum spill on the property, right? So nobody knew about this. The environmental comes back, the phase one, you now have to order a phase two. Well, we're going to probably have to retrade.
Got it.
But I think most importantly, you want to kind of gather up as much intelligence as possible, formulate an underwriting that makes sense, and then most importantly, have a conservative strike price that if the seller is going to say yes, that you can transact. And then if the seller begins to like counter and want more money or this, that, and the other, you'd be like, hey, look, I know that I can transact at $9 million, but if you're asking 10, my certainty of closing just went down 25%. Right? Just put the onus back on the seller and say, once I get on site, I'll be able to firm up these numbers a little further. We typically, interview 2 or 3 general contractors while on site. And then at that time, we can then go into contract, but certainly want to have a site visit once we have a countersigned LOI. Any
Hey, just
questions?
quickly,
Yes, bro.
that was a really good question, actually. Good answer as well. Sprinklers. You mentioned you might have to put them in. I'd be surprised. A hotel built after some year wouldn't have sprinklers already built in. Is there some sort of generally recognized, I guess, rule of thumb about the age?
It's not the age, it's just the use case, right? So hospitality, because it's not an extended stay and people are there just for 24 hours. The code for hotel rooms typically do not require sprinklers. Typically.
Really?
Right. Now, if you are a savvy hotel operator, you're going to know that you're going to get some substantial discounts from your insurance carrier if you do have it sprinklered. So, but when you have a change of use and go into a multifamily type asset, most cases code requires the addition of sprinklers.
So this could be a few $100K on a project that size, right?
$2,500 per door.
Yeah.
Or room or key. And then you also have to incorporate standpipes, right? So the existing standpipes may not be enough to support adding sprinklers to every hotel room. So if you have to increase your standpipes, that's another additional $100,000 per.
Wow. Holy cow.
Right?
Good to know.
So it's always better to throw that into your underwriting and say, okay, I know I'm going to need sprinklers. In some cases, Travis and I are working on a project in Indianapolis. There are firewalls within every, 20 feet or something like that. So it does not require apparently us putting sprinklers in, because the fact that there are firewalls every 12 to 15 feet.
Got it.
Yeah,
So
because we have, because
Okay.
there's, anytime that the living space for a two-story building is less than 18,000 square foot of actual living space. If you have firewalls in between that amount of space, sprinklers are not required.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
my pleasure. All right, let's jump into the next asset. Christina, would you
Okay.
throw that pitch deck up, please?
Second.
And while we're waiting for Christina to put that up on the screen, anybody have any other questions? All right, well, we're going to jump into an asset in my backyard. This was brought to me by a friend that had come across this in South Lake Tahoe. So this is a Motel 6, South Lake Tahoe. And it is supported to be converted from hospitality to multifamily per the city. So we've already got that box checked. Now we want to look into this a little further. So next slide. Here's the
So
property.
had the current owner done that work, or is this work you had done to confirm that with the city that a conversion was
The
acceptable?
broker who has this as a listing had inquired to that fact
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
and had been marketing the asset as such.
Okay, I see.
So Motel 6 first opened back in January 1976. 143 keys. It's a two-story suburban, exterior corridors, sitting on just over 4 acres. Next slide. Here are some pictures of the property. It looks like it's in decent shape. Next slide. Here is the overall aerial view of the property. So again, sitting on Highway 50, which is a major thoroughfare arterial freeway that goes up into the Tahoe region. So it has some great frontage there. Next slide. Some more information on the property. It looks like we have a grocery outlet across the street. It has some fast casual dining, not too far from the Truckee River. So again, great location, a good potential for conversion. Also sits pretty close to a seasonal mini golf, so it has some recreational activities close by. Next slide. And here are the analytics. So multifamily is trading around 213,000 per door. Looking at the absorption, certainly brings a concern initially because it looks like it's a negative number, right? So the amount of apartments are being leased up on an annual basis is declining, even though it shows a population growth of 6.3%. The rents are decently strong. And if you notice under construction, all you see is zeros. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of building going on. Next slide. And let's look at some rent comps. So here are the comps in the area. Oh, there we go. Average is around $875 for a 300 square foot unit. Now, these particular hotel rooms are quite small. I believe they're around 200 square feet. Even with that being said, it looks like these smaller units are renting for around $900 per hotel or studio apartment. So renting for around $4.50 per square foot. So the average being around $875 for around a 200 to 300 square foot studio apartment. Next slide.
Hey, Stephen, point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
On that chart, you mentioned dollar per square foot looked like $1.20. And with a You know, I'm
Yeah,
looking at the
so
bottom and,
yeah, I would have to, shore that up. I always like to look at the average. So what I would typically do is I would add these three together, right?
Oh,
So
I see.
$2.92 plus $4.50 plus $1.20,
okay,
and then take that total, divide by three, and that will give me that median of around 875.
wow. All right, thank you.
So that lower property numbers or letter C could be just a really older property. I would, obviously want to call and talk to the property manager, even visit the asset while I'm in town. But yes, great catch there, Bo. Next slide. And so the seller would want $20 million for this asset. And if we were to basically rent these out, I think the rents here are a little on the low side, 589, but that even being said, doesn't even close to penciling at 20 million. So I think if we were able to stretch this, I think it would probably pencil somewhere closer to 10. So we're a long ways away. Any questions on this underwriting?
What's the insurance like up there, Stephen, with all the fires we've been getting on the property?
I don't have the financials in front of me, but that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if we have the insurance and taxes on this screen, but
Let me pull it up.
yeah, if you can pull that up, I'm sure it's going to be on the higher side. We were looking at an asset in Miami, and the insurance went from 192,000 for 112 keys. It tripled in 1 year to 550,000. So needless to say, we walked away from that deal. And so insurance can easily kill deals because that's coming right off the top, right? It's pulling your cash flow right off the top.
Yeah, that's what's kind of posing the challenges as well with the conventional multifamily properties as well. The insurance and the taxes are kind of throwing out the numbers a lot.
Big time. Taxes and insurance will kill deals.
Yeah.
All right, want to jump into the next one, Christina? We could shelve that question for the taxes and insurance for later, or you
Here,
can pull that up while, unless you have it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to pull the financials, and then this is per unit, and there you go. So property
Here's the most-
insurance is showing 365, which seems actually pretty reasonable. Taxes being 1755 per door per year. And this is based upon a comp within that market. So not too bad, not too bad at all. Okay, I think we have one more hospitality asset to review, and then we'll turn it over to Nick for our retail to self-storage. I think we were looking at, I think the last one is a property that I was looking at in Miami.
Miami, yes,
Yeah,
Miami.
South Beach. So brought to me by a broker, and yeah, they want a lot of money. They want a lot of money. I think they were talking around 655,000 per key. And it's just a little bit of a stretch here. So this is the asset in question.
Oh, that's because it's right off of Collins Avenue. That's adjacent to the beach.
Correct. This is right on South Beach. So they have two assets, one being 65 keys, another one being 85 keys. It's a ownership group, and they want to unload the 85 key asset first. So it would possibly pencil if we combine the two, but you're right, Nick, this is right on Collins. Literally looking across from this hotel is the beach. Next slide. So open in 91, It looks like it was originally built in 1950. It's currently closed. I believe the owner had gone ahead and started gutting all of the hotel rooms with the anticipation that another developer would see the value and the opportunity and come in and take this over. One big concern I see that's kind of glaring, I'm not sure if anyone else can see this, but if you look at the parking, I'm not sure what you're going to do with 18 spaces. Especially if you're doing a one-to-one conversion, you're hoping to have 84 apartments. Who gets the parking? Right? So that's a big problem. It's sitting on just under an acre. But yeah, this is, that would be my first concern, is where does everyone park their cars, right? Next slide. Here are some pictures. Got someone floating in the middle of the pool. I hope he's not drowning, but standard concrete building, nothing fancy, nothing flashy. I think personally they're just going to probably level this asset down to the ground and build anew. I think that would probably be the play here, with the limitation being the parking. Unless they take all that retail out and turn that into some type of parking garage. But I mean, that's just something to consider when looking to purchase something like this. This is heavily distressed, permanently closed, and has only 18 parking spaces. So these are big challenges for a big asking price. Next slide. Let's check out that location. So, like they say in real estate, it's location, location, location. And this one could not possibly be a better location. So in the heart of South Beach, right on the water. Again, personally, I think they're probably going to sell this to a developer who's going to level this asset and build something new. I think that's going to be the play here. This is, I think, a little beyond repurposing, but that's just my humble opinion. Next slide. Here are the analytics. So in this area, it doesn't look like there's a lot of apartments being rented. We have a negative number for the absorption. And then if you look at the population growth, we also see negative numbers. So a lot of people are being priced out of South Beach, right? It's a very expensive location, if not probably the most expensive location in the country, maybe second to Hawaii, possibly third to San Diego. So super expensive area to live in. Again, in the doors, what you're trading at per door is below what they're asking for per key. So that doesn't make a lot of sense, at least for me personally. The rents are moderately weak based upon their location, but again, I think a lot of people are probably just getting priced out of this location. Next slide. Here are some rent comps. And we got a lot of letters there, and here are some numbers. So the smaller studios are renting for about $3.50 to $4 a square foot. So good numbers, in some cases as much as $6 per square foot. So I guess it really just depends on the location. So studios are demanding around $1,900. So strong rents, again, very expensive area to be living in. But again, the limitations on parking alone would make me, really, probably consider not to move forward on something like this. Next slide. Let's check out the underwriting. So they're asking $53 million. You think they're going to take my offer for 10? Probably not. But, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So don't ask, don't get. Offer submitted. We'll have to see. But again, they were asking somewhere in the neighborhood of like $600,000 per key. And multifamily is trading at $300,000 per door. So how is that going to work? It's probably not. So this is going to be a pass, unless they're going to give it away for 10 million. I'm sure I can assign this purchase contract to another developer if they were to accept my offer for 10. Highly unlikely. Any questions on this underwriting?
No,
This concludes the first half of our presentation. I'm gonna kick it over to Nick to have him lead us off on our retail to self-storage. And Nick, maybe if you can touch upon our first deal together in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then jump into your presentation.
Yep, and I'll even throw it back to the Ramada Inn in Kissimmee, Florida. It seems like these sellers are even more outrageous at 53 million for that hospitality asset.
All right.
The 500 key hotel we're looking at for 50 million. So I'm pulling up an update for the Cincinnati property so you guys can see it.
Yeah, maybe show some pictures, share some details, and then yeah, congratulations, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, super excited. About 10, 11 months of hard work looking at this and just finding different opportunities to flow through. So I appreciate the mentorship and excited to share this property with everyone here today. I believe we reviewed this on last week's call. This is 3915 Reading Road, the Lennox building. So built in 1928, 56,000 square feet amongst 3 stories. Retail on the first floor, followed by 2 floors above that were either utilized for multifamily or office space. As Stephen had mentioned earlier in the call today, listed for 1.8, we're able to get it to pencil generously at 1.2 and then go back to the seller to ask for carryback financing because of how motivated they are and get.
I looked at this building 2 months ago. I looked at this building and I wondered about this one. No kidding, the Lennox.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So you're looking in the right spot. I think one of the most important points I saw on this transaction in particular is just how motivated both the seller and the broker were to find a way to win. There's several other properties Stephen and I are working diligently on where that is not the case. Whether it be the jurisdiction, the seller, the broker, you want to find motivated parties to help push these through. And, you know, sometimes you're able to make a deal happen, but you also have to look at what's the next several years going to be working with these partners or working with these people. An example like a JV. So super excited to see this. Steve and I will be reviewing the PSA that was sent back to us with the contingencies that we had asked for and we're able to acquire. And we'll have that inked and sent back to the seller and begin our due diligence period. So very exciting times. Thank you,
Very
Stephen.
cool.
Any questions
This is
on this?
near
Guys?
Xavier University, right? It was hawked to me as a potential student housing.
Actually, the brokers that brought this to us were marketing it as a self-storage conversion, in part because it's already partially approved for self-storage.
Yeah, I
And-
think that's okay. Right. That's vaguely familiar too.
Yeah, so the OM on this one was interesting because it actually had a plan put in place from a CapEx standpoint for the conversion costs with the market rental rate saturation. So they had a really good marketing flyer for this conversion, where we're able to find it and say, okay, that checks all of our boxes. You know, here's a little bit more of a conservative price based on what we expect the CapEx to be and the rezoning of the jurisdiction with the jurisdiction. And that's where we dropped it from that 1.8 to 1.2. And then bringing in the carryback financing is what really brought it up to above that 30% IRR. So exciting opportunity here. I look forward to give you guys more updates as it progresses. And then also exciting today, we'll be reviewing a property that Manpreet had actually brought to me. So we've hopped on 2 calls and, you know, Steve and I will mention this weekly. And Christine, if you'll drop your email into the chat again, reach out to us guys, bring us properties, bring us opportunities, questions. Manpreet, you know, has raised his hand and been on these calls every single week. So I gotta give you credit for that. And I've taken my time to meet with him, talk about scouting. The last meeting we had, we were able to go through Crexy and look at off-market listings that he had actually pulled in retail, light industrial, and existing self-storage. And later today, we'll be on a call to review kind of the underwriting, the strategies behind some of these properties that he's brought to our group here and see if there's anything that works. This is one of 3 that he had brought to us, and we're going to review it today. So just want to, you know, give this a plug and encourage you guys to reach out to us with any kind of opportunities in partnership. Bo, I know you've sent us a few properties to take a look at. But anyone who's viewing this, whether live or on our recordings, there are opportunities out there, just like Travis, who's also on this call. Anyways, diving into it today, we're looking at Brookdale Shopping Center. This is located in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Nick, and this is sorry, this is a question not related to just the self-storage, but both to multifamily conversion and self-storage as well. This is for you and Steven. Steven, when you guys now, let's say for Cincinnati, you guys are kind of sharpening the axe for the PSA, and the PSA will get countersigned by both parties and whatnot. Do you guys intend to do this as a 506C or 506B? Or JV?
Yeah, typically it's a 506C. In most cases, depending on the size of the deal, it could be just a JV, right? So we could bring in a capital partner, someone who's local, for example. It could be a general contractor who's looking to, kind of move from the day-to-day transactional type world and want to get into like multifamily, or in this case, retail to self-storage conversions. And so it just comes down to making that outreach and, partnering up with those particular individuals. But if it's a larger deal, it would be, a 506C in most cases.
Got it.
So yeah, it'd be an accredited investor, and that's probably, call it anything north of $1 million raise, right? So I think all of us, I think your network is your net worth, right? So I think we all know individuals that have, 401k sitting around probably underperforming. So I think it's not very challenging to raise $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 from a group of investors that you may know personally. But I think anything over maybe $1 million, you may want to, go into a 506C and actually syndicate.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to.
No, great question and a great answer. So take a look here, guys. Moorhead, Minnesota, and this would be an existing retail building that's currently sitting vacant that would be eligible for self-storage conversion. This is actually property I looked at a long time ago, and man, Breet had brought it back to my attention, and I scrubbed it a little bit closer and saw that there might be some new opportunities with it. And we'll take a look at where it makes sense for us today, or Stephen would say the strike price. Starting with just kind of the KPIs around it, we can see the square foot per capita is ideal on the 3 mile, a little bit saturated on the 5 mile compared to State Almanac. It's not listed on the screen, but I will say that there's about a 3-to-1 ratio of non-climate controlled to climate controlled. So while this area is somewhat saturated on the 5 mile, there's an underrepresentation of climate controlled facilities in the area, which would discount these numbers here and indicating that there's some market demand. And if anyone's ever been to the Midwest or Minnesota, we know those are brutal winters and hot, humid summers. So that climate control is going to be a premium in the market and something that a consumer would be looking for. The rates sit at about 123 for a climate controlled, a little bit soft when initially looking at the area average on a 5 mile radius. But upon further review, I was able to find some more like for like or Class A facilities that would model what this conversion would look like, and pencil in at 140 for a 10 by 10 climate controlled. And we're seeing the market as high as 150, 155. A large population here for the 3 and 5 mile, despite negative growth, but still strong representation. Median household income passes the check here. We'll look at this deal today at 1.5. It makes sense for us, bringing a 27% IRR. The asking price is 4.6 million. So quite a distance off here, but still something I would shoot over to this broker because of the length of time it's been on the market at just over 600 days. There's also additional lot space on there. So they're seeking to subdivide this, which now this building sits on about 4 acres, but there's additional land that might be available. My intention is to talk with the broker, see if that would be applicable to the purchase, and maybe bring it up the price where we can then acquisition that by either putting additional drive-up units and or platting off and subdividing it for retail space, which is probably their intentions as well.
Nick, I have 2 questions. Hey,
Yeah.
Nick, sorry, I have 2 questions. One is on that previous page, you have a strike price of 1.5 is where it pencils out for you. Presumably that's hitting a certain IRR. Is that the metric you're using to dial in your price at what works?
Yeah, so ideally we want to start around a 30% IRR. That's going to be most attractive to investors. Obviously with the debt market restricting interest rates climbing again to combat inflation, anything
Right.
between a 25 and a 30 is going to be ideal. The reason why we want to try to sit closer to 30 is because as we go through negotiations, we might have to give concessions on price or just cover other CapEx needs. But that 27.6 at the 1.5 is why I selected that one. So you're spot
Okay.
on.
Okay. Second question is related to the typical analysis of 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile radius. I've come across a guy who's quite experienced in storage. He's got numerous projects of his own. He's been in it for 15 years. His claim is that storage is a 1 mile business. And I'm wondering how you feel about that. Is that in your experience an accurate statement, or is it, he says really you're selling convenience because you're nearby. And if you think somebody's going to drive 3 to 5 miles for your place, he said it's a little bit of a pipe dream. And I'm just curious, that's been resonating or ringing in my head. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Obviously proximity is going to be important with whatever kind of business you're going to utilize. I would argue to that point that how often are you visiting your self-storage facility, right? So I think the product that you're delivering combined with the price point that it's at is going to be the biggest driver for what they select. Because most people are going to park it there. And unless you're running a business out of it, you're usually storing furniture, some sort of personal items there. It's sitting there for a period of time. So if I can find a facility that's nicer at a better price point or better value, we'll use that terminology. I'm going to go to that 3 mile. I'm going to go to that 5 mile.
Gotcha.
Outside of that might be tricky. Other things that we've utilized on radius is drive time, or we'll look at geographical features. So for example, if there's a bridge to cross because there's a river, something else that might be an inconvenience, despite, hey, this might be 1.5 miles over to the left, but it's much easier to drive these 3 miles here.
I see.
For anyone who's lived down in California, you'll know this very well. The physical distance might not be the indicator as much as like, are you taking stoplights or busy intersections, freeways? So it's a
Good
great point. I
answer.
think it'd be my case.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the engagement today, guys. This is probably one of our more lively calls. Back to this building here, built in 99 and renovated in 2015. We'll get some interior pictures here in a minute. It is a pristine facility, which obviously makes the CapEx much easier. Sitting on 8 acres. So that's where I just mentioned that they are seeking to sell it and divide that in half. Likely use the remaining 4 acres or 3.91 for other types of development. And once I get in contact with the broker, I'll kind of get a better idea of what their vision is and find other potential opportunities, whether we develop this side of it, take on the whole 8 acres, or maybe work in some sort of partnership fashion. Another awesome thing about this, you can see in the picture here and also listed is the pylon signs, any kind of just signage. There's also freeway visibility and a signalized intersection. These are all great signs to help increase exposure for the lease up of this property. So here we can get a good look. Exterior facades in great condition, right? Maybe some just calcium buildup on the exterior here, nothing that can't be treated, pressure washing or acid treatment. But in good condition with the brick building here. Interior is awesome. I love to see the lighting on the roof here. That's usually probably one of our larger costs with these type of conversions is having to put enough lighting in for those units. Floor looks pristine. This is a project that would be easy to come in, place the hallway units in there, which can range from anywhere from $25 to $40 a square foot, depending. But it'd be an easy plug and play to convert this interior warehouse into a self-storage facility and give that like new Class A facility feel for it. Taking a look at the location, you can see 2 major freeways that sits on the corner of, as well as that signalized intersection here. And as we kind of expand out to the left, we can see that it's embedded in a residential site, which is always going to be ideal. Off to the right here, it looks like we have maybe a strip mall or some other retail services as well, which would only bolster the success of the project. Again, just taking a closer look at it, we can see the freeways, the subject property here. Looks like they have some additional retail sites, fast casual dining as well. Dive into the demographics, we can see the competitor landscape here. So Bo, going back to your question, we can see a high density over on this side. Looks like a river winding through here. And not anything super close outside of these two green dots, which would have been built in the last 3 years. So some newer competitors in the area, but that's a good sign for us. It means there's obviously demand here. We can see where the existing supply is, and we're able to insert ourselves into this market, but not have that density of competitors in that 1 to 3 mile radius. We only see one blue, which would be a
Is
plan.
this produced by Radius Plus, this driving radius
Yep.
mileage? Oh, interesting.
So this is
Okay.
just the 3 and 5 mile map. They have overlays where you can do drive time.
Oh, M is miles, not
zoning.
minutes. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought this was a driving time map. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 or 8 months ago. I was able to go on with their one of their sales reps and just get a product demo from them. I'd recommend, if you guys have subscriptions to any kind of software online, whether it be Crexy, CoStar, Radius, you can reach out to their group and you can have them do product demos for you. Usually there's an opportunity for them to upsell some enhancement of software, but they'll walk you through any of your questions, anything like that. And that's where I was able to learn a lot about the software. They're generating RV and boat storage. On most of the properties that we look at, they don't have that overlay available yet, but they're building that as well. So we can also have, easier time comparing those kind of demands and saturations of those markets, which goes hand in hand with the self-storage development that we're looking at. Another cool thing you can see down here too, they have maturing loans, REITs, as well as radius listings. The loan maturation, Stephen, I think you sent us an article today, 1.2 or is it $3.4 trillion maturing in loans in 2023 and 2024.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. So kind of another way to look into different opportunities, guys, is what's the maturity of the loans, whether it be an existing self-storage or retail building. Well, it looks like you had a question or an add to that.
Oh, I was just going to say, I recall seeing that same article, and later I saw a breakdown that suggested it's 27 billion in multifamily alone.
Mhm.
1.2 or however many trillion that is. That's a bunch, but I think that's all debt, maybe. I can't remember the category, but when you get narrowed down to
Yep.
multifamily, at least it was a $27 billion slice.
Yeah, and you can imagine someone maybe back in 2018, 5 years ago, that took on a certain type of financing that had a balloon payment maturing in 5 years, not anticipating a dramatic spike in interest rates, or, as things dropped precipitously in 2020, 2021. And now, oh shoot, here we are expecting to be able to refinance, recapture this. Or oftentimes with these commercial assets, the evaluation of the property's gone down 20, 30, 40%. All of a sudden now, with cap rates increasing, I'm not able to get the leverage from the bank. I'm sitting at 85% LTV. Whereas before I might have been 65. So yeah, I need to sell. And I think, guys, there's going to be a lot more opportunities over the next 18 months than we can even imagine.
If
So a lot of-
anybody's interested, I've been toying with the idea. I'm a novice at it, but I'd love to find somebody that knows how to start a fund with the specific goal of recapitalizing projects that end up in trouble exactly as you just described. So if anybody's interested in that, I'd love to chat some more and talk that through.
Yeah,
I'm
sure,
always
Steve.
interested. That sounds great.
This is the time right now. There's going to be market corrections continue to happen. Taking a look, guys, at just a global view of the rates in the market here, we can see every different size of self-storage represented. A lot of times you'll see that some of these will be underrepresented, whether it be a 10 by 20 or even 10 by 15. I've noticed in some markets, which will tell us hey, we have a new offering that might be more competitive. Globally at 123 average on a 18-month look back. But what's interesting here is we can see rates on the rise. So in this case, 132 was the December average for 2022 amongst the 123. So we're seeing an increase in pricing, which would suggest an increase in demands. And as I mentioned before, I went actually back into Radius and looked at several properties that were trading around 140 to 150 for a 10 by 10 climate controlled. So those would be those Class A facilities. I believe it was U-Haul and CubeSmart, which would be our big national brands to compare to. And that's, similar to the layout that we would use and oftentimes as a third-party operator for these type of asset conversions. Taking a closer look at the underwriting, I went ahead and updated the slides today from the original view. I had drive up built in here, but I decided to simplify it. We can see the applicable rates here. particularly on the 10 by 15 and 10 by 20, they actually spiked pretty hard at 185 and 271. So we're seeing $1.36 per square foot, which is almost similar to a 10 by 10, which you would not expect because obviously economy of scale, you typically get a discount, but in this market, there's a huge demand for that. Down here at the acquisition price, 1.5 million. I've plugged in 150,000 for the exterior facade to develop signage, treat anything in the building exteriorly that we need to upgrade, clean to make like new. Interior units, 1.4 million. That would be at $30 a square foot. And then for common areas, based at front office, retail shop, $60,000 plugged in here, $20 a square foot. This would bring us to a 27.7% IRR and 100% refi capital with a 3.48 multiplier. So really strong returns for cash on cash. And, you know, it's a bit off of what the seller's looking for, the 4.6. But like we always mentioned, we're going to shoot an offer out there, get the discussion started, look at opportunities. You know, we may be able to come up on this price, whether it be a carryback opportunity for this property, additional lands or assets included with the purchase, or even a JV opportunity potentially. That wraps up the presentation for Moorhead here. And again, Manfred, I want to give you a shout out for really being diligent, bringing a lot of different opportunities. I think you submitted 14 leads to us. You and I will be diving into a call later today to review 2 more and go through the underwriting to see if there's a potential there. So I have all the data mined and pulled, ready to go. I should say Christina got all the data mined and ready to go.
Go,
So
Christina.
Christina. She does more work than all of us combined.
That's right.
And in less time. So gotta give a little bit of love on Christina right now because she's the backbone of our operation here.
You.
Thanks,
Thank
Christina.
you.
I love the way you say Miami. Will you do it one more time for the group?
Miami.
Yeah, I think that's the right. When we went down there to visit, that's how the locals said it. The
All
little-
right. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. As always, excellent presentation. Not to run off too quickly, but I believe Dan has something he'd like to present. We're now diving into office to multifamily. And we've been sending out offers to some opportunities. I think they look quite interesting. I think to Bo's point, we're going to see a lot of distressed office complexes. People are not going back to brick and mortar and working from an office environment. So what are we going to do with all these office complexes, right? I think they need to be revitalized, reused, and repurposed. And so, Dan, you got the floor.
All right, thank you. I'll try to get this in here as fast as possible without skipping too much. So this is a property that I was given through my broker network by an agent out in Texas. This is an office complex out that way. It is roughly 250,000 square feet of property in Plano, Texas. The building was built in 1983, 3 stories. It sits on a 22-acre lot, so it's a fairly good size as well. And they're looking to get 24 million for the property. I spoke with the broker today, and she did tell me that the property is completely vacant right now too. So we're hoping that we might be able to use that as a little bit of leverage. That way, if the seller isn't bleeding money, they might be willing to go down a little bit more on price than what they're looking for. It's got ample parking at 933 spaces, at 3.73 per 1,000 square foot. With the way that we work the rooms, it turns out to 3.22 parking spaces per room. So there's plenty of parking there on site. Here are a couple of pictures of the property, just kind of a general look at the outside of the building and some of the inside amenities. Looks like there's a nice kitchen to possibly use as a social area or gathering area possibly. It is located in Plano, Texas, and the 2 buildings to the left are retirement homes, retirement communities. And then it is also, this picture doesn't show it, but it's just north of the 190 that runs through Plano. And it is also not far from the University of Texas, Dallas. So it's got a somewhat of a should have a high demand for the apartments. Take a look at the analytics here. I had to move my screen around some, can't see everything. So the exit price out there is going for 250 roughly a unit. The absorption does throw up a big red flag for us at the negative 386. But kind of what counters that is the 21.9% population growth in the area. Typically, we look for anything north of 5%, and being 4 times that is a pretty good number. And with this property, we'll show some of the, pulled the rental meters on it, but typically what we do, since we're going to be starting fresh and we're going to make normal size rooms out of these in these apartments, and we're not going to be trying to take a hotel room and make it into a studio. So we'll use more of the market prices that those are going for instead of the rental meter numbers on that.
Hey, Dan, real quick, how do
Yes,
you
sir.
reconcile that negative absorption? It looks pretty massive, negative absorption. How do you reconcile that with the, massive population growth in the area?
Stephen, do you want to hop in a little bit on that? I know we discussed that briefly.
I don't
Yeah,
want to take
so,
away 'cause time is
yeah,
short.
we could, go back there. I mean, if you look at the population growth of 21%, and we know that there's a big influx of people moving to Texas. There's probably some anomalies there that CoStar is just not picking up. So what I would like to do is, if we were able to get this LOI executed, to, fly into that market and actually drive some of the apartment complexes and actually sit down with the property managers and find out what their availability is for studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And I think that would, answer our question. I mean, it would be nice to have this information be accurate, but again, CoStar is, pulling data from various different sources, and in some cases it's not going to be accurate, but seeing that population growth would lead me to believe that there's going to be a greater absorption in that area.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep.
So here is a quick look at those rent comps, but like I said,
Yeah.
we throw
Dan,
those out.
I'll just add one more thing. So this Plano is kind of a nicer suburbs of the area. So and from a long-term perspective, yeah, the growth is there to what Stephen, you just mentioned.
All right, thank you, Manpreet. I appreciate that insight. One thing I forgot to mention when looking at the square footage of the building, it's 250,000 square feet. And what we typically do is we cut out 30% of that square footage for hallways and amenity space. So we're looking at about 175,000 square feet of space that we're going to be converting into apartment complexes or units once we get into the underwriting here. And we have it set aside, as you look at the underwriting here, for 175 500 square foot studio apartments, 75 700 square foot 1 bedroom apartments, and then 39 900 square foot units as well for the 2 bedrooms, excuse me. And with that, we worked the numbers and we were able to get it to 16 million for where it started to pencil for us on this. You can see the IRR and the refi capital return are exactly where we want to be. And like Stephen says, green means go. So we submitted an LOI on this property and we are waiting to hear back currently on this one. Like I said, I spoke with the broker again earlier today, and she did say that an offer got rejected at 15 million. So we'll see what happens, but we're hoping that we offer a few different options with the seller carryback as well to kind of get the price up a little bit. So hopefully it's something that we could work with moving forward.
Sounds like we're in the ballpark. And if you can go back one slide, Christina, one thing you want to touch upon is the actual cost or CapEx per door.
Oh,
Yes, for converting hotel rooms. If the hotel room is in perfect shape and we're just adding a kitchenette, you're probably looking around 15,000 per key. And so in some cases, if it's an older, longer in the tooth type hotel where we're doing floors, we're doing windows, we're doing doors, we're kind of touching all the surfaces, including adding a kitchenette, you're talking around 25,000 per key. In this case, we're going to have to actually add interior walls, right? So pretty much everything needs to be added. So we're penciling around 50,000 per door for these apartments. And I think, Michael, you had a question or a comment you mentioned a moment ago. And for those who have not met Michael, Michael is our newest member on our team. he just joined a few days ago, and he'll be adding some value to these calls as well. But Michael, if you want to ask that question, we can go ahead and comment that to the group.
My theory was that maybe the market was delivering more units than were being absorbed, which would cause that number to be negative, right? But
Yeah,
maybe
that's a
I'm
good
wrong-
point.
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we go back to the analytics, Christina, go back 2 slides to the analytics, and one more. If you look at the construction, right? So, based upon what Michael is saying, you can see the number of units under construction, 741, right? So then you see there's a 12-month construction start, and then this is the number of units being delivered, so 857. So that could maybe show that or reflect that negative number. There's more units being completed or delivered than they're actually being absorbed. But with that population growth of 21.9%, that would lead me to believe that there's a greater demand coming. Great point, Michael. All right, and I think that concludes our call for today. I think we touched upon 3 different asset types and covered some great opportunities, got some wins, we got some offers, we got some LOIs out. Any other questions, concerns, comments you guys want to bring up before we conclude today's call?
Yeah, Stephen, from my side, so I'd like to thank Nick for his time in the last few weeks. He had been very diligent in providing the information in a very transparent manner, and has been patient enough to answer all my questions. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Nick. Thanks a lot, Nick. And by the way, the specs looks good on you. So
Thank you very much, Manpreet. I'm waiting
You're
for my
looking very
contract
studious,
delivery.
Nick. You're looking very studious.
Yeah, I fear it bolster my discussions with brokers. It makes me look more trustworthy.
Love it. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining. I'm going to start posting invitations in the various different groups so we can kind of increase the attendance. So feel free to pass out the link for today's call to friends, colleagues, peers in the business that would like to learn more about converting asset classes. We welcome any and all to learn about this great business. We're all here to learn and grow together. Again, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll
Hey,
see
Stephen.
everyone next Thursday. Yes, Dan.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did notice there was a comment from John Page that he had a question. on
Oh
what's
yeah,
your-
John. You were, I
what's your
think,
thoughts on
mentioned,
converting-
yeah, single tenant to multi-tenant, I believe was the question. So a single tenant office building to multi-tenant office space. Great question. I think personally, I like the stabilization of multifamily. I think there is a dire need for housing. I would want to probably convert that office space to multifamily. But there is a big need for mixed use. So if you had a single tenant office building and you wanted to say, chop that up into, 5 or 10 different units and then renting out those units for like a mixed use, I think that is definitely a play. It just really depends on the market and the demand for that type of need or that type of niche. But great question. Does that answer your question, John?
It does, and I appreciate your feedback.
My pleasure.
I've enjoyed listening in today, so appreciate it, guys.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific. You guys have a great day and a wonderful weekend.
Great stuff.
Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Stephen.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.